Something happened in March 2026 that no government agency has been able to explain, no physicist has been able to model, and no precedent in the entire geological record of this planet can account for. It did not begin with an earthquake. It did not begin with a solar flare or a volcanic eruption or any of the catastrophic events that typically make headlines. It began with atomic clocks, the most precise instruments human civilization has ever built, all of them, simultaneously, reading the wrong time, not one clock, not one laboratory. Every atomic clock synchronized to the U.S. Naval Observatory, the National Physical Laboratory in London, and the International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service in Paris, flagged the same deviation within a 12-hour window. Their automated systems classified it as catastrophic instrument failure. It was not an instrument failure. 3 completely independent agencies, using 3 entirely different measurement methodologies, confirmed the exact same reading. And when NASA's Crustal Dynamics Group verified it, when the European Space Agency's Swarm Satellite Constellation verified it, when Parkes Observatory in Australia cross-referenced the positions of distant quasars against their catalog coordinates and returned the identical result, that is the moment every scientist in the loop understood that what they were looking at was not a malfunction, it was reality. Earth's rotational period had accelerated from 24 hours to 20 hours. The day, the fundamental unit of time that human civilization has built every calendar, every clock, every agricultural and biological rhythm around, had shortened by 4 hours. And the correlated source of that change was the interstellar object designated 3IATLAS, with a statistical confidence of 0.999. Before you can understand why 4 hours is not a rounding error or a measurement artifact, but a genuine planetary emergency without a single comparable event in recorded history, you need to understand one of the most foundational principles in all of physics: angular momentum. Angular momentum is the rotational equivalent of linear momentum. For any spinning body, it is the product of the moment of inertia and the angular velocity. In any closed system, it is conserved absolutely. It does not change unless an external force, a torque, acts on that system from outside. This is not an approximation or a theoretical convenience. It is a derivation from Newton's laws, verified across every rotating system ever studied, from the quantum spin of electrons to the rotation of galaxy clusters spanning millions of light years. The classic illustration is an ice skater. When a skater pulls their arms inward, they spin faster, not because they generated new energy, but because they reduced their rotational radius, redistributing their existing angular momentum into a faster spin. For Earth to accelerate from a 2-4 hour to a 2-0 hour rotational period through any natural internal mechanism, its mass would need to redistribute dramatically inward, the equivalent of the entire crust collapsing toward the core by hundreds of kilometers. Earth's diameter has not changed by a single measurable unit, which means something external applied torque to a 6 sextillion-ton planet and shortened its day by 4 full hours in just 72 hours. The energy required to accomplish that is not a matter of speculation. It is calculable from first principles. Earth's moment of inertia is approximately 8 times 10 to the 37th kilogram meters squared. The change in angular velocity between a 2-4 hour and a 2-0 hour rotational period is approximately 8.7 times 10 to the negative 6 radians per second. When you run that calculation through the rotational kinetic energy equation, the result is an energy input on the order of 10 to the 29th joules. To put that number into a context, your mind can actually hold the total energy output of the sun across an entire second is approximately 3.8 times 10 to the 26 joules. The energy delivered to Earth's rotation over those 72 hours exceeds the sun's per second energy output by a factor of hundreds. It exceeds the combined kinetic energy of every object in the asteroid belt. It exceeds the yield of the entire global nuclear arsenal detonated simultaneously, every single second, for a full year, and yet Earth's surface temperature did not rise by a single measurable degree. That temperature, reading that flat, unchanged surface temperature, is the data point that does not just challenge physics. It breaks it. Every energy transfer in the known universe produces waste heat. This is not a guideline or a useful approximation. The second law of thermodynamics is the most universally verified principle in the history of science, confirmed across every energy conversion process ever observed. A car engine produces heat, a nuclear reactor produces heat, a supernova produces heat at stellar scale. The conversion of energy from one form to another, always without a single documented exception, releases some portion of that energy as thermal radiation. To inject 10 to the 29th joules of rotational energy into a planetary body without producing any detectable thermal signature requires one of exactly two possibilities. Either a 100% efficient energy transfer, which the second law of thermodynamics categorically and absolutely forbids, or a mechanism that bypasses thermal dissipation entirely by coupling directly to the gravitational field rather than to the electromagnetic interactions, through which heat is generated and distributed. There is no third option. And the forensic timeline of how this unfolded only deepens the problem. On March 11th, at 1400 UTC, the International Earth Rotation Service in Paris detected the first deviation, not milliseconds, not the kind of tiny fluctuation that gets filtered out in routine calibration. 12 minutes, a 12-minute discrepancy in Earth's rotational period. NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center recalibrated their very long baseline interferometry instruments and assumed sensor failure. The ESA's Swarm satellite constellation independently verified a distinct wobble in the rotational axis, consistent with sudden acceleration. Parkes Observatory cross-referenced quasar positions and returned the identical result. By March 12th, the day had shortened to 23 hours. By March 13th, it had compressed further to 21 hours and 30 minutes. By the morning of March 14th, the reading stabilized temporarily at 20 hours. And at the exact moment the Earth Rotation Service detected that first 12-minute deviation, LIGO gravitational wave detectors registered a coherent, non-dispersing gravitational wave burst directed precisely at Earth's rotational axis, originating from the coordinates of 3IATLAS. The correlation coefficient between the 3IATLAS pulse timing and the onset of Earth's rotational anomaly is 0.999. In statistical terms, that number does not describe a correlation. It describes a mechanism. But the gravitational wave detection is not even the strangest part of what the instruments recorded during those 72 hours. The atmosphere is accelerating with the planet, and that should be physically impossible. When a solid surface spins faster, the atmosphere above it, a compressible fluid with its own independent inertia, should lag behind, producing catastrophic supersonic winds along the equatorial belt. Ground-based anemometers around the world are reporting completely normal wind conditions. The entire atmospheric column, from the surface through the stratosphere, is accelerating synchronously with the lithosphere, as though the planet and its atmosphere have been enclosed in a single unified inertial frame. Physicists working on this have a term for what appears to be happening: a localized reference bubble, a region where every component of Earth's system responds to the applied torque as one coherent body, rather than as separate physical systems with independent momentum states. 3IATLAS is not gripping the rock, it is gripping the reality surrounding the rock. And the rotational acceleration curve is not chaotic. It is not the irregular, turbulent signature of a random gravitational perturbation producing unpredictable torque fluctuations. It follows a smooth logarithmic progression, mathematical, precise, converging toward a specific target velocity. Astrometric simulations modeling that curve forward project in one 8-hour day within 48 hours of the current reading. At 16 hours, geostationary orbit the altitude at which GPS satellites, communications relays, and weather monitoring platforms maintain fixed positions above the surface becomes geometrically incompatible with the new rotational period. The satellites will drift. The global positioning network will fail. But that infrastructure collapse is not even the primary consequence. It is a side effect of the centrifugal force increase that, as the planet spins faster, begins to measurably reduce effective surface gravity at the equator, driving ocean water migration toward the equatorial bulge on a scale that no coastal infrastructure anywhere on Earth was designed to survive. The rotation of 3IATLAS itself was measured, and the result removed any remaining possibility that this sequence of events is coincidental. The object completes one full rotation every 20 hours, Earth is being matched to it. Synchronization is not a side effect of whatever gravitational interaction is taking place. It is the objective. In physics, rotational synchronization between two gravitationally coupled bodies has a name, tidal locking. It is the same mechanism that keeps the moon permanently presenting its same face to Earth. Its rotation period matched exactly to its orbital period through billions of years of gradual gravitational torque exchange. The moon did not choose that state. Gravity enforced it over geological time through the slow dissipation of tidal energy, a passive process requiring no active mechanism, no guidance, no intent. What is happening to Earth's rotation is the inverse of that process in every meaningful way. It is not slow, it is not passive, it is not driven by tidal dissipation across billions of years. It is happening in 72 hours, without thermal dissipation, without tectonic cascade, without atmospheric disruption driven by a coherent gravitational beam from an object 150 million kilometers away that rotates at precisely the target period. There is a further anomaly layered beneath all of this that the standard models cannot absorb. The northern hemisphere is rotating measurably faster than the southern hemisphere. For any rigid body, this is geometrically impossible. A solid sphere must rotate uniformly at every latitude simultaneously. That is what it means to be a rigid body. The differential rotation means the crust is not responding as a single rigid structure. It is twisting. The northern and southern lithospheric plate assemblies are receiving marginally different torque magnitudes from the applied gravitational coupling field, producing a differential shear stress across the equatorial fault boundary. That shear stress should be cascading through every major tectonic plate boundary on the planet, the Ring of Fire, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the Himalayan Collision Zone, the East African Rift. None of them are rupturing, not one. The same external field producing the differential rotation is simultaneously applying a compressive coupling force across major fault boundaries, preventing the accumulated shear stress from crossing the failure threshold. The planet is being spun and stabilized simultaneously by two distinct components of the same applied field, operating in precise coordination. This is not a blunt gravitational perturbation striking Earth at random. This is active mechanical engineering at planetary scale, monitored and adjusted in real time from 150 million kilometers away. Earth's magnetic field is also responding, and the physics of why tells its own story. The geodynamo, the convective circulation of liquid iron in the outer core that generates Earth's protective magnetic field, is directly sensitive to rotation rate through the Coriolis effect. In Earth's outer core, the Coriolis force deflects rising columns of hot iron into organized helical paths, and it is that helical geometry that generates the large-scale, structured magnetic field rather than the chaotic, small-scale fields that unorganized convection would produce. As rotation rate increases, Coriolis forcing strengthens, helical organization intensifies, and dynamo output rises. NASA's magnetospheric multiscale mission detected a 12% spike in magnetic field intensity within just 6 hours of the rotational acceleration onset, precisely consistent with the theoretical prediction of enhanced geodynamo output from increased Coriolis coupling. A stronger magnetic field has immediate and dangerous consequences for global electrical infrastructure. Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, the principle underlying every electrical generator ever constructed, states that a changing magnetic field induces an electromotive force in any conductor within that field. The rate of change of the field, not its steady magnitude, determines the induced voltage. As Earth's magnetic field strengthens rapidly rather than remaining stable, every long conductor on the planet becomes an unintended antenna for that changing field. Transoceanic cables spanning thousands of kilometers accumulate induced voltages proportional to their length. High-voltage power transmission lines experience phantom currents that overwhelm surge protection systems. Long metal pipelines develop electrochemical potentials that years of cathodic protection investment cannot counteract within days. The phantom voltages already appearing across the global power grid are the early-stage signature of this induction effect. They will not stabilize until the magnetic field stabilizes. The magnetic field will not stabilize until the rotation stabilizes. And the rotation will not stabilize until 3IATLAS determines that it has achieved its objective. At 11:42 UTC on March 14th, The European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft detected the dimension of this event that transforms it from an isolated and unprecedented engineering anomaly into something far larger in scope. Earth's rotational axis stable at 23.5 degrees of inclination to the ecliptic across tens of thousands of years of Milankovitch cycling through ice ages and continental drift and mass extinction, events shifted 0.08 degrees in 6 hours. The direction of that shift resolves towards Cygnus X1, a stellar mass black hole in a binary orbit with a blue supergiant companion, approximately 6,000 light-years distant, one of the most intensely studied high-energy astrophysical objects in the galaxy. The probability of an axial shift of that magnitude occurring in that time frame, pointing with mathematical precision toward a specific catalogued astrophysical object, is not merely low. It is not improbable. It is excluded by every model of natural planetary dynamics currently in the scientific literature. Changing a planet's axial orientation requires applying torque perpendicular to the existing angular momentum vector, a gyroscopic precession force that is geometrically distinct from the equatorial torque that changes spin rate. 3IATLAS is simultaneously applying two geometrically distinct force components to Earth, one accelerating the spin, one precessing the axis, in a coordinated field geometry that prevents catastrophic tectonic response while achieving precise targeting of a specific celestial coordinate. The centrifugal consequences of continued acceleration cannot be deferred indefinitely by the stabilizing field. At a 1/6-hour rotational period, the centrifugal acceleration at the equator reduces effective gravitational surface acceleration by approximately 0.3% for each additional hour of acceleration beyond the current 20-hour period. At that rate, ocean water migrates toward the equator as the gravitational potential, while their shallows relative to the poles. The water does not rise from ice melt or atmospheric warming. It redistributes from existing ocean basins, draining polar and mid-latitude coastal zones while flooding equatorial lowlands. A geographic rewriting of coastlines driven not by climate change but by rotational mechanics, operating on a time scale of days rather than centuries. The central unresolved question every geophysical model is now computing is not whether the stabilizing field can prevent tectonic cascade at 20 hours. It demonstrably can. The question is whether it can maintain that prevention at 18 hours, at 16 hours, at whatever final period the logarithmic acceleration curve is converging toward, and whether 20 hours is the actual destination or simply the period at which Earth currently matches 3IATLAS's rotation while the synchronization lock has not yet fully engaged. Synchronization lock engages when two coupled rotating bodies achieve identical periods and the energy exchange between them reaches equilibrium. At that point, the applied torque does not cease, it inverts. Instead of accelerating the slower body toward the target period, it begins maintaining the match state against any perturbation that would break the lock. The Moon is locked to Earth. Pluto and Charon are mutually locked. Tidal locking is the universe's preferred final state for any two gravitationally coupled rotating bodies, given sufficient time and energy exchange. 3IATLAS has compressed that process from geological timescales into 72 hours, using a gravitational coupling mechanism that bypasses tidal dissipation entirely. The 20-hour period is not a waypoint in an ongoing acceleration sequence. It is the destination. The lock is engaging now. In the string-theoretic framework, every force is a vibrational mode of the same underlying substrate stretched across 11 dimensions. A civilization that has mastered the engineering of that substrate does not apply force to a planet the way we apply force to a machine. It edits the local physics. It adjusts the coupling constants between the gravitational field and the rotational inertia of a planetary body until the target configuration emerges as the system's natural equilibrium state: no waste heat, no tectonic cascade, no atmospheric disruption, because none of those consequences occur when the physics itself has been locally rewritten to make the new rotation the path of least resistance rather than a violation of it. The axial orientation towards Cygnus X1 is the final parameter. A black hole binary, at known coordinates, stable across galactic timescales, visible to any civilization equipped with radio telescopes. It is the reference point from which the follow-on mission navigates, the The rotational synchronization ensures Earth's magnetic dipole axis points toward that reference at the moment the information flux transmission completes. The planet is not being destroyed. It is being configured, oriented, cataloged,